So we're drawing the nose, the lips, and the eyes today. Just to keep it a bit simple, I'm just going to be using a pastel pencil. You can use anything. This idea of thinking about the features that I'm teaching you can be applied whatever any medium. It's just a way of looking at things. This pastel is just Conte Apari Pastel 007. Anyway, it's like a sanguine kind of thing. And I'm just drawing on some newsprint just to keep it simple. So when drawing the nose, that's what we'll start off with today. Exact same thing, like drawing anything. We'll do the gesture of it, which is just really the direction. And we'll keep a simple shape from nostril to nostril. If I know this is my tip, let's just connect nostril to nostril. And then you can see the underneath. I will do nostril to nostril, high arch, nostril to nostril, bottom arch. And we'll bring the nostril up this way and that way. Just completing it. And basically we've got a nose. Now you're thinking, wait, there's a tip in the nose. There is. We'll just draw that in. It's really more of a bulbous thing more than anything. And then we'll get the well, these are nostrils, but these are also nostrils. We'll get the rest of the nostril in, I suppose. And again, I'm just breaking it down to really simple shapes. And I need to bring the bridge of that nose up. And then on this side as well. And I've got myself a lovely nose to work with. That was like that's like about 6 lines. And I've got a nice nose. Now we've got to think about, when shading the nose, just how it turns. We can clearly see the shadows on this side and the light on this side. So I'm going to keep, even though I know the bridge turns that way down and into the cheek, I'm not really going to draw in that at all. I'm going to keep it quite light. If I was painting this, or actually if I was doing a full drawing, what I'd do is I'd keep all this light value the same, maybe just add a highlight here. Like that'd be like maybe my strongest light, and a slightly lighter light around here. Not as light as the highlight, but slightly lighter light here, and that can give a slight indication of the bridge. On the nose, there's a muscle that wraps around it, like this a bit. Bit crude, but you get it. It wraps around it here. So I find in a lot of portraits that this area here is a soft edge. So what I mean by soft edge is that there's not a hard transition from dark to light. So just to show you here, that to that is a hard edge, but this, so if I did it slightly softer, so this is lighter than here, but it's a softer transition to this light than this is. It's a shorter jump. So I find now it's not in every portrait you do. In fact, a lot of times in a lot of portraits, like this whole area is a bit soft. But just with this area of muscle, and because on here the bone's sticking out, if you touch your nose there, you can feel that your bone sticking out on the bridge of your nose. This can create quite a harsh turn, so you'll feel that as a harder edge. And then again, when shading in, this is with dry medium now. Oh, you can do it with paintings as well. Go with the direction of the nose. We know this is heading up towards the turn up here. Again, a bit softer. I'll keep that. Same here. I also suggest when drawing or painting the nose, don't make your nostrils super dark. Like, don't make them black. Make them a little darker than what you see, or than the shadow maybe. But if you make them like super black, it throws off the whole viewing of the drawing. And if our light's coming down from here, we're creating a cast shadow on our lips or on our mouth, which we'll get into a bit later. But your cast shadow, you just need to keep the same value all the way. Don't get too tricky with it. And then if our light's hitting here and we're turning, we're going to create a core shadow, which is where the light starts to turn, which is going to be a bit darker than... Oh, you can need to be the same darkness as your cast shadow here, because if you think about there's something called reflected light, where if the light's hitting around here, it's going to be reflecting, even like here and here and all that, it's going to reflect into that shadow, into this form that's sticking out. So to represent that, we're going to keep the cast shadow a bit darker than that reflected light. But the reflected light is still in that shadow. It's not going to be as light as our light. Yeah, very simply, that's our nose. Our nostril curls inwards. And then you got is it the fulcrum of the lip? You know those bits I'm talking about. But yeah, that's a simple nose. Kept it easy. We'll do one more, just quickly, just to show you before we move on to the lips or the eyes. Let me get my little reference here. Okay, next reference, above view of the nose. Again, it's actually same direction anyway. Just straight line down. Instead of going the archway we did above, a high arch to show that we're looking underneath, we're going to do a low arch to show that we're looking above. And then our nostrils come in. And they come in. Don't see any of that underneath, maybe just a tiny bit, but we can draw it, instead of here, we're going to draw it on top of this, just to show the light turning. I'm going to give the indication of that tip of the nose that runs into the bridge. And you can see in this reference we got a bit of an expression, so you'll see the muscles curled in a bit more. Yeah, the muscles are about midway through into that bridge. And again, simply, I'll just do it quickly because I've already explained most of this. Keep your shadow shape simple. Give a slight idea of that nostril coming in. And that's a very simple way of drawing the nose, but a lot of times that's all you need. Not a lot going on with it, but it gives you all the indication that, hey, because once I put everything else around it, it's like, oh, I'm looking at the nose, you know? But anyway, we'll move on to the lips. Alright, when attaching the lips, or when drawing the lips, you want to think about the whole idea of the mouth. So the mouth is just a big circle that wraps, and the lips wrap around that circle, like your nose would be sitting up here around that area. That'd be your nose area. Maybe a bit bigger, maybe about here. And we need to have the lips wrapping around that, like that. It doesn't go straight across. If you draw the lips straight across, it's going to look very odd. We're not two-dimensional beings. And I know we're working on a two-dimensional medium, but we're here to represent the 3D and understand how light reflects off us. So again, we have that wraparound. A wraparound can depend on the expression, but in general, it depends on it can either wrap around upways or downways like that. But this one just happens to be going up, like a slight smile. We'll get that in. We'll just get the top of the upper lip there that curls simply like that. Attach that to the ends of our lips. Very simple. Do let our mouth slightly open there, so just follow that curve. It's a little wider than the top curve. And then attach. I'm not going to attach it directly to that point. Just a little bit of thickness. So just beside it. Always looks a bit nicer, because really this darkness, I mean, it's kind of look like it's fading away into that. It's not a direct point. And now just, I'll rub that out a little bit just because our mouth's open and I think it's going to be a bit distracting. Here we are. We'll get the bottom lip in again. Thinking about the three-dimensional form. It's not just going around this, but it's also going around that way, you know? It's not just going, sorry, I'll do that again. It's not just going around that way. The lips are also going around this way, you know, like a little head when you're drawing that. So again, we'll get the opening of the lips. So we'll get, where does that bottom lip end? I'm going to say about here. Get the opening around here. I always find the bottom lip is a little bit thick. The thickest bit is in the middle, and it nearly overlaps the rest of the bottom lip. Very, very slightly. You maybe don't need to think about it too much when painting. When drawing, to get that gesture in, kind of looks nice. Again, not too much. Maybe I've exaggerated a bit much here, but you understand what I'm saying. When doing the bottom lip, I also don't usually connect it onto this point. It's not as sharp as you think the lips are. Might have done this opening a bit wide, but that's okay. If I was drawing the teeth in, I wouldn't just do, very simple shape. Don't draw each individual tooth. Very simple shape to represent those teeth. And if you're like shading in, actually I'll show you here. Let's get the underneath of that. That chin pops in here somewhere. And think about that the lips are coming out, so it's creating a cast shadow just underneath here. Usually, if this side of the lip is in shadow, kind of connects into that cast shadow, so we create a soft edge. And also find here as well, usually has a soft edge, but except instead of shading, it's in light, but it's a soft transition from here to here. The bottom lips always look a bit softer than the top lips, just because the top lip, the light is hitting down that way, so it's creating quite a harsh cast shadow. You got light here, and then turn quickly into darkness. And we'll just get those lips in here. And then if I'm doing the mouth, not leaving it white, because teeth aren't, they're white, but they're in your mouth. They're going to be in shadow, so don't make them pop out like the whites of the eye or something like that. Or even the whites of the eye are also usually in shadow. I'll show you that next. If you want to make it a bit darker. It's a bit darker over here, isn't it? The lips are very much about soft and hard edges. Really recommend practicing a lot, like especially if you're going to do a nice painting, if for yourself or for someone else. Draw what you're study a little bit what you're going to be drawing first. Each individual lip and nose and all this sort of thing looks a bit different. And again, we're thinking about this whole being a bit of a circle, so we've all drawn a sphere and make put in a shadow, core shadow, and highlight. Same thing with everything else on the mouth. Have to think of the full feature first. We're not just drawing the lips, we're drawing what the lips are on top of, Oh, I lost my rubber. I'll get that for the next one. Alright, let's just do another bit of lips here. There we go, I'll do that one. Again, we have an expression here, which is very good to work with. We'll get that expression going downwards just to feel it out. And then the idea of the lips wrapping around this way. I'll go from point to point in the lip. Maybe it's a bit higher, is it? A bit more on the right side of that gesture line that I did, because this is kind of turning in, so it should end about here. I'm seeing more of this side, just from the camera angle itself. Again, I was thinking exact same way I thought about the other lips, just putting in my big shapes, keeping it simple. You'll see with expressions like the lips get a bit thinner towards the end because it's all curling in. Very simple lines for the teeth. Don't have to do anything crazy. And then let's see where our lips start at the bottom. And then here as well, a bit bigger. Connect them up exactly like you did the last time. Again, they have a bit thinner here than we did on this one because the mouth's open. You can see the lips actually wrap in towards the mouth, on the outside of the mouth. Connects to the membrane inside your mouth a bit more. I think I'm going a little bit aloof. Is aloof the right word? With this other lip, but that's okay. Let's get our idea in. And we'll get the rest in, though I maybe crop this picture too much. I can't exactly see what what the rest of the drawing is, or the rest of the facial features are. And again, still gonna think about this as the big forms. It's just a big sphere, you know. You get those soft edges underneath, where we're creating those shadows. Now that cast shadow's coming in. Shading in here. That top lip is getting a lot more shadow than the last one was, wasn't it? Oh, not shadow, light. Where'd my eraser go? Now I'll live with the eraser for now. So we can see that form turn quite well here, right? We don't get that super harsh turn that we did in the last one with the lips being extended. And then obviously the mouth itself is covered in darkness with some of the teeth getting a bit of light. But again, they're not, don't paint them, just don't paint them white. Don't draw them white. They look a bit crazy when you draw them white. It's very little circumstances where teeth in the painting are going to be shining bright. Because a lot of times you're surrounding them in darkness by these dark values. So if you make them white, it's going to draw all the focus towards those teeth, which might be good for like illustrations and whatnot. But if you're going for semi-realism, I suppose it doesn't really work. Anyway, we'll go to the next page and we'll do some eyes. All right, next one's here. I have a bit more space on my page, so I'll draw it a bit bigger. Just like the mouth, the eyes, just a sphere. Just a sphere. There we go, that's the eye. But we can draw, everything on top of that sphere. We're looking at not directly on, but we have everything wrapping around the sphere that we have. Just makes it simpler if we think about these things in big shapes. Just getting the upper eyelid in. Some of the bottom one. The eye bag is always good. Again, this is just the bottom of your eye underneath, but it's just wrapped skin. So let's get all that in. That's good information. Eyes, especially with older eyes, they're all just, everything's wrapping on top of each other. Just layers. Which is why it can get a bit confusing. And like, if you get these layers wrong, it just it instantly looks a bit off, especially to the person painting it, to be honest. You can drive yourself insane drawing eyes sometimes, or painting eyes. But that is, that's for the most part just your eye. You got your upper eyelid, you got your bottom eyelid, you got the eyelids wrapping, well, with the older gentlemen, we got them wrapping on top of each other. And then we just got to put in our brow. And now we can shade this. Now, how do you approach this shading? So we know with this, the light is coming down that way. So let's think about that. The brow is going to be mostly in shadow. That's going to have maybe a harder edge than the rest of it. So our brow is in shadow. Maybe because this is a sphere, all the left side of the sphere is going to be in darkness. Even the white of the eye is going to be in darkness. Just because it's the white of the eye doesn't mean that it's pure white. That can have shadow too. Alright. And now where do we go? What do we do next? If we're thinking about this as a sphere, our core is going to be around here. You're going to have some reflective light. Well, actually, our core is going to be about like this. And there's some reflective light happening, but we'll get the rest of our dark values in. You can think that, oh, yeah, I've lost so much of the eye, but this, a lot of times, if you're drawing a model from far away, or we're not here to paint hyperrealism. This can be our best representation of an eye that we can get, and if your portrait's in shadow, especially if like one eye's in light, one light is in darkness, this can read like an eye. You don't need a lot. Keep it as simple as possible. But maybe let's say we want to put in a little bit more. This is all our one value shadow, and that's our light over there. We got those separated, so I can go with slightly darker value in the eye to get the pupil. But if I'm doing that, I need to get the rest in as well, because just the pupil being dark can look very, very odd, because that's just not how it works. Get the inner here. The eyelid is literally like a little, like, it is a lid, it's like a little lip, so that also creates a shadow slightly on the form, so the upper bit will be a bit darker. And again, this is also creating the shadow in here. connecting up into that brow. Brow needs might be need a bit darker now that we've gone a bit darker on the rest of it. And then this turn here on the bags of the eyes. We've got that going. A little bit under here too. And the rest of it. And then now this is all I need for an eye. I don't need to start. A lot of times you don't even need to put in the pupil. That will read a lot better as an eye than going in doing every single, like, you know, a bit of the iris you can see. This is really all you need. Keep it soft. The eye is a soft object. And just because you have this, like, you could do slightly, maybe that's your hard turn here. Slightly hard edges around. This usually is a bit softer. But because you have, usually in a portrait, if the light side of your face is creating a quite harsher shadow, or it's creating shade on your eye, but it's surrounded by this light, like usually the forehead's in light, the cheeks in light, and this side of the nose in light, that your viewer's attention will still be drawn to this, and this will really pop for everything else, without even having to put in a lot of detail. You know, you're good to go. Don't overcomplicate it for yourself, because you'll drive yourself insane. I'll do one more eye just very quickly, just so you guys can watch the exact same process, but from a different angle. Now for this one, I'll do another circle. You don't always have to do the circle, but this is more just a representation. Circle. I'm looking above this time, so I'm gonna get the underneath of that top eyelid a lot more. That's wrapping over that eye again. Like this whole bit is underneath of that eyelid. Eye comes down a bit. Eyelid wraps in towards it. I'll do it a bit darker just so you can see what's going on. And then your bottom eyelid. Not perfectly going like that way. It wraps slightly up like that. You can see slightly up, and then again. This is coming out as well. Just from the angle we're kind of seeing it from this view, eh? So represent that. You can see, think about what you can see. Everything is a three-dimensional form. I'm now seeing the underneath, the top view, side view of every little bit there. And then we get just the brow in. And we have an eye. It's good to go. And then you just shade this. Keep it clean. Clean shading is also a good, important thing for rendering your eye. If it's not clean, it gets very hard to read what's going on. Again, most of this eyeball is in darkness as well. If I was painting this, I don't think you'd even see. I wouldn't even try to paint in that. Maybe a slight hint of the colour eye, but that's about it. Here we go. That's all we need. We've got an eye. Very simply. Didn't think about it too much. Just thought about the shapes. We didn't stress ourselves out, which is the hardest thing to avoid when you're painting sometimes. You want to create something beautiful, and you will if you just keep it simple. Don't be too harsh on yourself. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed that, and thanks for coming, and I'll see you in the next video.